exactly does that cover the bombs Donald Trump dropped on Syria last night? Joining me now, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who in 2001 was the only member of Congress to vote against that authorization, and John Soltz, chairman of VoteVets.org. Congresswoman, how does that authorization that I just read, the AUMF of September of 2001, authorize Donald Trump to drop bombs on Syria today?
That authorization, Joy, does not authorize Donald Trump to use force in Syria or anywhere else in the world. And that's why, Joy, we have got to come back to Congress, debate, and vote on a new authorization. And believe you me, we're building bipartisan support for that. I have over 100 members who signed a letter to Speaker Ryan saying that, look, if we're going to continue with our involvement in Syria, Congress has got to stop being missing in action, and we have to do our constitutional job. But this is very dangerous. Congress is not in the mix. We're really missing in action, and we need to get back to the drawing board, repeal that resolution, which we tried to do last year. Speaker Ryan stopped the democratic process where we had bipartisan support to repeal the 2001 and come up with a new one.
And speaking of your lame duck speaker, have you heard from him? Has he had anything to say at all about the military action that was just taken without authorization by Congress?
A couple of days ago, I believe I heard him make a statement saying that he thought that this administration had the legal basis to use force. Sure. But minimally, this speaker should adhere to the will of the American people and repeal the 2001 resolution and allow us the opportunity to do our job and debate and come up with a new one.
Do you have enough votes to, if you were to put up a repeal of that AUMF, do you think you guys have the votes? The Democrats have the votes?
I think we have the votes. I think Democrats and Republicans want to do this. And once again, last year in the Appropriations Committee, I Democratic and Republican support to repeal the 2001 authorization, to give this administration 8 months to come up with a new one while the existing one is in place, and then we could debate specific authorizations for specific areas where we send our brave men and women into harm's way to decide the costs and consequences and then vote up or down on a new authorization.
Yeah, and you know, John Soltz, I'm struck by the people who have the most enthusiasm for doing what we did in Syria, which again is not changing the regime. There's no pretense here that we have some great love for, and humanitarian concern for the very same Syrian refugees we refused to let into the country. But there was great enthusiasm by John Bolton, him with no military experience, having never served, and of course Donald Trump, his 5 deferments from Vietnam. This enthusiasm for using our military around the world without going back to Congress for authorization as the framers intended it. As a veteran yourself, what do you make of that?
Well, I think the John Boltons of the world are really hard for us when he's quoted saying he didn't want to die in a rice paddy in Vietnam and he's a huge war hawk. That's very difficult. But one of the conversations I got to have with President Obama before he left office was with a group of veterans, and he looked at us around a table and he said, you know, there aren't that many veterans left in Congress. And yes, there's no draft, so we don't make a large percent of the population, but he goes, I think your all's voice is really important because if I fought everywhere in the world the Republicans wanted me to fight, we'd be in wars in like 8 different countries. And that's totally true. And I think that's one of the big reasons at VoteVets we try to get more veterans elected, like Ted Lieu, like Ruben Gallego, like some of our veteran members in Congress that really can hold this president accountable, because right now Congress is completely AWOL in their responsibilities to audit the president and his ability to conduct war. U.S. forces have died in Yemen, Niger, Iraq, Somalia, Syria, Afghanistan, just in Donald Trump's first year. Is AWOL, and I think, unfortunately, our best bet is to have a big midterm election so we can get some control over neocons who don't really understand anything about war that are currently taking over this administration.
Yeah, lots of millionaires in Congress, not a lot of veterans left. You mentioned President Obama, John. I want to play August 31st, 2013, when President Obama spoke out after Bashar al-Assad used chemical weapons for the first time, one of the earlier times that we know of, against his own people. Take a listen to President Obama.
Now, after careful deliberation, I have decided that the United States should take military action against Syrian regime targets. I'm also mindful that I'm the president of the world's oldest constitutional democracy. I've long believed that our power is rooted not just in our military might, but in our example as a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that's why I've made a second decision. I will seek authorization for the use of force from the American people's representatives in Congress.
And I will note that when Donald J. Trump was one of those who opposed the use of military strikes, he wrote, the president must get congressional approval before attacking Syria. Big mistake if he does not. Congress, John, did not grant that approval to President Obama, and thus he didn't strike. And now he gets a lot of criticism for letting Syria cross the red line, but he was not authorized to do so by Congress having gone to them. What do you make of the fact that Donald Trump now believes he needs no authorization from Congress in order to do whatever it is he wants to do in Syria?
I don't think he knows what he wants to do at all. 2 weeks ago, or last week, he said we were going to be completely out of Syria, which is why some people think Bashar al-Assad used the weapons. So he has no overarching strategy or vision for where this nation needs to go, what our policy is. Syria is complicated because there's other state actors that will fight us for terrain. And one of the reasons we opposed President Obama striking in Syria in 2013 was the sheer fact never felt the Russians were going to, allow for the toppling of Bashar al-Assad. So I think the larger problem for the president is he doesn't know what he wants to do in Syria. And now, as we've seen McMaster leave, outside of General Mattis,
Right.
General Mattis sort of won. His statement last night was very different than the president's. And I think that Mattis wanted a very limited action, and the president doesn't have a vision.
Absolutely. Let me just hold you well back there. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I want to go to Nikki Haley, who is speaking right now at the United Nations about the attack in Syria. Take a listen.
Not as a symbolic show of force. We acted to deter the future use of chemical weapons by holding the Syrian regime responsible for its atrocities against humanity. We can all see that a Russian disinformation campaign is in full force this morning. But Russia's desperate attempts at deflection cannot change the facts. A large body of information indicates that the Syrian regime used chemical weapons in Douma on April 7th. There is clear information demonstrating Assad's culpability. The pictures of dead children were not fake news. They were the result of the Syrian regime's barbaric inhumanity. And they were the result of the regime and Russia's failure to live up to their international commitments to remove all chemical weapons from Syria. The United States, France, and the United Kingdom acted after careful evaluation of these facts. The targets we selected were at the heart of the Syrian regime's illegal chemical weapons program. The strikes were carefully planned to minimize civilian casualties. The responses were justified, legitimate, and proportionate. The United States and its allies did everything we could to use the tools of diplomacy to get rid of Assad's arsenal of chemical weapons. We did not give diplomacy just one chance. We gave diplomacy chance after chance, 6 times. That's how many times Russia vetoed Security Council resolutions to address chemical weapons in Syria. Our efforts go back even further. In 2013, the Security Council passed a resolution that required the Assad regime to destroy its stockpile of chemical weapons. Syria committed to abide by the Chemical Weapons Convention, meaning it could no longer have chemical weapons on its soil. President Putin said Russia would guarantee that Syria complied. We hoped that this diplomacy would succeed in putting an end to the horror of chemical attacks in Syria. But as we see from the past year, that did not happen. While Russia was busy protecting the regime, Assad took notice. The regime knew it could act with impunity, and it did. In November, Russia used its veto to kill the Joint Investigative Mechanism, the main tool we had to figure out who used chemical weapons in Syria. Just as Russia was using its veto, the Assad regime used sarin, leading to dozens of injuries and deaths. Russia's veto was the green light for the Assad regime to use these most barbaric weapons against the Syrian people, in complete violation of international law. The United States and our allies were not going to let that stand. Chemical weapons are a threat to us all. They are a unique threat, a type of weapon so evil that the international community agreed they must be banned. We cannot stand by and let Russia trash every international norm that we stand for and allow the use